And so failure is the greatest mentor we have if you've got the right attitude. So that's for you and for me. It's always a great reminder that you really actually have to cherish failure, and you actually have to have the balls, yes, I said balls, to go ahead and give it a go. So this is Josh Pies, and you're on the Bootstrapped Unicorns podcast. I'm not ready to start the show yet because I need to listen to this just for another second. It's not a funk song, people. We could totally play it through that, but it's on my phone right now. Never feel happy until you try? Actually, I'm going to turn this down a little bit to keep it going. So before we started the show, the guys and I were talking about my kids for a minute, and mentioned once again that my kids don't know me as Dad. They know me as Dosh. Have you ever heard this story? We'll get into the business side in a minute, but so they call me Dosh because my daughter Bella, her first word was a very angry Josh. I was mortified because that meant two things. One, her first word was not daddy or mommy, it was my name, which felt way too formal for her first child. And two, apparently my wife had been the example that teaches how to bark her husband's name, and therefore my daughter learned that. It was actually kind of funny. And so I said, no, Bella, it's daddy. So she went, Dosh! And I laughed my butt off. And then she called me Dosh 100 times more because I laughed my butt off. I've been Dosh ever since. She tried, and now all of the kids in my family know me as Dosh, and it is the best thing. When I hear that, I'm the only Dosh on the planet, and it makes me very proud. So, oh yeah, it's winding up. Here we go. I think I'm ready to do an episode. All right, I am Josh Pies. This is the Bootstrapped Unicorn podcast, and we're ready to talk entrepreneurship and business and all such things. This is my last solo cast before we invite somebody on. And who's coming on? Mr. Rob Kurzreiter, my dear friend. I'm going to tease this next episode because after we have this conversation here, you're going to want to get in and make sure you're subscribed. Make sure that you're following us on YouTube and all of the podcast outlets because Rob used to be, his skin color has since changed, he was a Blue Man. That's right, Blue Man Group. He also was the drummer for, guys, was it One Republic or One Direction? It was one of those ones. One Republic. It was One Republic, like the One Republic. That's right. Yeah, I ain't worried about a thing. One Republic, oh my. And he doesn't do any of that anymore. Yeah, he plays drums still. He is a realtor. And everybody knows a realtor, come on. Like, guys, the licenses fly around in Florida. You cross the Florida-Georgia line, and like 3 days in, you're a realtor. It's just like law. He's a realtor, I'm a realtor. None of us are actually realtors. But you get the point. Everybody's got the license, and some people do it, and some people just say it. And Rob not only does it, but he's one of the top in the nation. So we went from world-class touring artist to world-class realtor. He actually sold my house above asking price and well negotiated. I was very happy. So I can't wait for that episode. But you're here for this episode, so let's talk a little bit. So solo-cast-wise, episode 1, you know that we went over who I am a little bit. In episode 2, we went over my legacy impact matrix, which is a theory I have. I don't think I'm going to be writing a book on it. I think it's one of those things that's important to understand. It's a great reason why we have this podcast. But it's definitely not something that I'm going to turn into a book, but maybe a chapter in a book at some point, right? And in this episode, what I want to do is just kind of go over a couple of, the things that we do in my business that are the reason that I find success for us and for our clients, because a lot of this conversation is about success and success in entrepreneurship. And a lot of what we do, so C47 Films is actually the company that my wife and I own. That's the company that's producing this podcast. So you're watching a C47 Films production, as it were. But a lot of our clients come to us and they know they need to play a social media game or a game in, get involved in video in some way, but they don't quite have a plan. And sometimes they don't even fully understand our products and our services, or their own products, I should say, and their own services. So we actually have to get into a lot of business consulting. And it was a couple of years ago that I started realizing that I'm as much business consultant as I am a marketing professional. So I want to go over some of the things that we talk about a lot with our clients, because we're helping them not only get their mind right, but they're also clarity on what they're selling to the world and how people perceive them. Because business is kind of a dating relationship. I'm here and I want you to want me. You're there and I want to be wantable by you. And so we have to make this kind of, this kind of magical connection. And so there's this kind of dating analogy that I have. In fact, actually, so I was about to go into, and I'm looking at my show notes here, a couple of things I wanted to talk about is failure attitude, which I think is super important, and it helps people get their mind around the permission to not have had it right, but that they can pursue getting it more right, but also getting clarity on, who your ideal client is and how to treat that client. So I'm going to go over that in a minute, but I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm going to break this out of the vault here because I used to tell this story all the time. So entrepreneur, business person, salesperson, this story is so that you can see how dogmatic you have to be about your belief about something in order to get the result you want. The year was 2001. And I was in college and I was sitting in a place called the Cabaret. Now the Cabaret is, and guys, ask me questions as I tell this story, because if I'm missing a detail that you need, just ask me, okay? But I'm in the Cabaret, it's a lunchroom. On one side of the lunchroom is kind of like this grill area where you can go ask the chef to make you something. On the other side was all the greasy food that you shouldn't have, but everybody wants, like pizza and things that you dip in a fryer. And in the middle were all these tables and commuters, and I was a commuter. I didn't stay on campus at college. We kind of camped out there. So I start camping out there, and there's this girl who catches my eye. She was awesome. Everything about her was right. The first thing that I remember actually is the brown suede miniskirt. Oh man, but that was college Josh, so we'll get past that and talk about the important reason why I'm telling this story. She had this Sony Vaio laptop. I don't know if you're old enough to remember these laptops, but they looked cool. It was the first laptop that actually looked cool. And she sat under the clock. And so I didn't know her name. She was just the girl under the clock. Now I should tell you that I noticed her at the end of a semester in 2001 going into the summer. And I thought, oh my God, I've got to meet this girl. I got to learn her name. Well, I get into the summer. That clearly had not happened. So I decide the following year, if she's still at Nazareth College where I went, which now is called Nazareth University with some crap logo that needs to be redesigned. Yeah, I said it out loud, Naz. I don't like it. Hold on, I'm going to drink to that. Okay, and the summer went by. She was on my mind, and I was hopeful she was still there, and she was. So my table, my usual table, kept creeping a little bit across the room, right? You got to get a little bit closer to the girl under the clock. And I observed a behavior of hers that I thought, okay, this is interesting. She would get a soda, a Pepsi. They had Pepsi products at the school back then. And she would go refill Diet Pepsi, like all day. She'd just get one soda and she'd keep going back and forth and she'd keep refilling the same one all day. So I thought, well, if I'm going to meet this girl, and so far nobody I knew actually knew her name, I'm going to become a Pepsi drinker. So I went and got a Pepsi, just the cup, standard tall cup. And I hated Pepsi, frankly. I was a Coke product person if I drank soda at all, but I was going to learn to be a Pepsi person. And so I had this really romantic notion that I was going to do like those 90s teen romance flicks thing where I'm going to go fill a Diet Pepsi. By the way, I keep saying Pepsi, but exclusively she drank Diet Pepsi. So I was going to drink Diet Pepsi. And as she goes up to grab a drink, I'm going to also go and I'm going to clumsily bump her hand and get a little soda on her hand and maybe even on her wrist and my wrist. And then I'm going to apologize and clean her hand off. And then I'm going to go, oh, I'm so sorry about that. And by the way, my name's Josh. What's yours? Right? Cute little icebreaker. It was that romantic idea. Well, she must have somehow sensed that I was working on meeting her at the Pepsi machine. So she changed all of her habits. And if I would go up, she would go sit down. And I had been somehow found out. And I thought, well, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to meet this girl. And so I kept doing it. Now, I found this out years later, that there was a rumor on campus. Now, I didn't dress like this back then, but I was in a suit and tie every day in college because I'd landed an internship that turned into a pretty well-paid middle management position in a large real estate investment trust. And I was 21 years old, but I had 14 employees, and most of them were old enough to be my parent. So respect was running low, and the vice president of the company took me under his wing and he said, look, I'm going to send you to Men's Warehouse. You're going to meet my guy. He's going to get you a good deal on a couple of suits, but if you don't start wearing these, I don't think you're going to get the respect to survive this job. So I would have to go to school in these suits, then go to my internship, which turned into a job, and then come back to do my evening classes. So I was always in a suit, which started a rumor around campus that I was a lecherous professor, and if you wanted an A in my class, you knew what to do. Completely untrue. I was not lecherous, nor was I a professor, but the word was out that I was, so good girls would go running. So this really attractive girl under the clock who drinks Diet Pepsi was running from me, but I had this Pepsi hand bump plan, and I wasn't giving up. So 6 months of this plan. And then finally, one day, she's sitting with people I know. So I walk in thinking she's gonna be at the clock. I'm gonna go get a Diet Pepsi, and she's over my shoulder, and son of a gun, I whirl around. Now I also had a Sony Vaio. Why did I get a Sony Vaio? Because she had a Sony Vaio, and I wanted to have another thing in common with her. I needed a laptop too. I wasn't spending that big. But anyhow, I swing around, I hit some people in the head. There's like, their heads are pounding. I don't care, I don't even frankly notice. And there's a chair near her at a different table. Didn't even ask if somebody was gonna take it. I just swing that bad boy around, and I sit down and go, hi, I'm Josh. Ignored the people I knew there, didn't even make the connection. I was way too excited. And she goes, hi, my name's Shannon. And then she looks at her friend kind of like, is this guy safe? That was an awkward moment. But apparently the girl she was with said that I was safe, and we got to have a conversation. Now, of course, I'm married to Shannon with 3 kids. So the diligence I put into that, it certainly paid off. And I've actually taken that dogmatic pursuit of the girl under the clock as a personal lesson that if you want something bad enough and you hatch a plan and you work that plan long enough, even if the plan doesn't pay off in quite the way you expected, because we didn't have our romantic teen movie moment, it'll still work out if you commit to it. I tell that to entrepreneurs all the time who are working on making their way through whatever thing that it happens to be. It could be startup, it could be new marketing plans, it could be developing a product. It's not easy, and you have to be almost, I don't know, I was gonna say stupidly committed, but there's a level of like childlike commitment that you can put to something, and there's like a childlike faith attached to that it does pay off if you keep going. It's just this, I think dogmatism really is the term. You think about religious fanatics and how dogmatic they are about it. You kind of have to turn into a religious fanatic about your thing. I was a religious fanatic about the girl. It worked. I can't wait to go home tonight and have dinner with her. It's over 20 years running now. It's been beautiful. And thanks to a failed Pepsi hand bump attempt, we've got a great relationship, and I think it's just a really good analogy for entrepreneurs that you just can't give up. And in the face of repeated failure, my plan didn't work over and over and over again. It didn't work in a permanent detrimental failure moment. It just didn't work. And Edison, how many was it, like 10,000 tries to find out how a light bulb didn't work to eventually find the one way that it did. And so I think that goes back to this, failure is a fascinating mentor for we entrepreneurs. I think it's really a fascinating mentor for everybody. I tell our kids all the time. My daughter Bella is in high school for the first time. She's in week 2 right now. And she's doing very well. There's a lot of anticipation going in. And I've been coaching her all summer that, some friendship tactics are gonna work, some clubs are gonna work, some of them aren't. You're gonna get into a test, and you're going to think you're well prepared, but high school's going to issue you a new challenge and you're not well prepared and you're going to literally flop the test. And it's not that you're incapable of the content or delivering on championing that test. It's that you found one way of studying that didn't work for you, or maybe it wasn't that there was enough study, so you found one way of living and being that didn't work in that moment. And so failure is the greatest mentor we have if you've got the right attitude. So that's for you and for me. It's always a great reminder that you really actually have to cherish failure, and you actually have to have the balls, yes, I said balls, to go ahead and give it a go. Because when you give it a go, you find out what does and doesn't work. What doesn't work, you learn from that. What does work, you actually learn less from what does work than what doesn't work. But once you find what does work, you keep going and try to learn as much about it as you can, correct, right? So that's kind of the failure side of the conversation I wanted to have with you. And I should remind you that as you're listening, I'm always having these conversations with myself too. You know, I'm on that journey as much as you are. So the other thing I wanted to introduce to you real quick, and it's just my belief system about how we operate as entrepreneurs, is that clarity usually leads to money. If you are unclear about who you are in the marketplace, if you are unclear about who your ideal client is in that marketplace, you are likely going to be lost. Lost people struggle to find their way until they're given clarity. What's that? Maybe it's a map. Maybe it's a guide who can walk you through things. So let me be your guide for a moment and explain a couple of things. And we're going to give you some free resources, by the way. We have a customer avatar worksheet that we do when we onboard new clients who need this type of workshopping. And you can have access to it. It's a digital worksheet on our website. Guys, remind me, we'll just make sure it's published in the show notes or wherever. So you can go through an avatar worksheet. But in the short version, you know, and of course, my middle child, Natalie, is addicted to the movie Avatar. So I have this, you know, bad connection where I'm now seeing blue people as I talk about a customer avatar. But the customer avatar is kind of like in Socrates' stories that Plato wrote. He wrote about the theory of the forms. And I don't know if you've ever read it's the cave. So Plato wrote about the cave, and it was this place where people's heads are kind of locked in place and they're seeing the back wall of a cave. And then there's a fire right behind them, not a dangerous fire, but it's a fire that would illuminate shadows. And in the world that we live in, and this is for all things, there's these spiritual beings that would walk objects between the fire and the people viewing the back wall. So what do? You get a silhouette of a thing. So if a chair goes by, it's the silhouette of the chair being projected on this back wall. And so what we know as humans is the form of a chair through the silhouette of a chair. And if you think about it, like I'm sitting on a chair right now, and I know it to be a chair, but it doesn't have 4 legs, it's a pedestal. It's actually a stool with a small back. But I can look at it and I say chair. And when you see your kitchen chair that maybe has four legs on it, and then you see your office chair that doesn't have 4 legs on it, but it's actually got 5 spokes with wheels on it because you can roll around, yet we still somehow know it's a chair. We understand now that we have this understanding of chairness, and that's the avatar of chair for we humans, and that's our understanding. Well, we entrepreneurs have to have an understanding of who our ideal customer is, the form of the perfect customer for us, so that when we are targeting our customer, and we do have to target customers, right? You know, we're pointing at them and saying, you need me, that we need to know who we're actually pointing to. Who is the you that needs me? Well, that's the ideal customer. So one short version of understanding how to workshop this is that I like to have an imagination conversation with myself and imagine what that person looks like. I like to give them a name. I like to know how old they are. I like to know where they live, what car they drive, how many kids they do or don't have. I like to know where they went to school, if they went to school. I like to know what their favorite TV show was when they were a child and what their favorite TV show is now. Why do I want to know that? Because when I make a cultural reference, I want to know that if they were a Scooby-Doo junkie, yes, I was a Scooby-Doo junkie, that I get the joke and it's kind of pleasant. I also want to know that they grew up in teen years watching Friends. My generation, we know most of the Friends quotes. You say pivot, I understand what episode that was. So if I were your ideal customer and you make a Friends comment, that's a warm comment for me. It's not a bad show, it's a good show. Those are good memories. I like that level of intel on this imaginary customer, because every time I create a marketing product of any kind to get my wares out into the world, I want to make sure that that ideal customer would think it's good and say, oh, this brings my attention to you. That's the type of alignment we need for ourselves, the clarity that we need for ourselves so that we can market well to our target customer. Now, like I said, if you need that worksheet, we actually kind of have an automated worksheet where you fill it out and at the end you hit submit and it's going to email you your own answers so you have a copy of it. And truth be told, I'll see that you emailed it out as well. And I may reach out to you, or one of our team may reach out to you, just say, congratulations, and can we help you further? And it's a genuine offer. We might be able to help you further. So this was actually a little bit inspired by the book Harvey Mackay's How to Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive. Now, if you've never heard of this guy, it's a great book. It's hard to find these days. Actually, I find it usually in used book bins or on Amazon. Harvey Mackay is an envelope tycoon. That's right. He found a way to make envelopes a multi-billion-dollar business. And you would think all envelopes are the same, but he found a way to make them differentiated and high quality and build great relationships so that he could sell millions and billions and trillions of envelopes. And one of his secrets to success is what he calls the Mackay 66. Now, this is almost creepy. Are you ready? He would build an FBI-grade dossier on every one of his clients. Not the business, but the person within the business. If that guy likes the Mets, he knows they like the Mets. If that guy's hoping to have kids with his new spouse, he knows so he can watch for when that kid is born, because guess what's going to happen? That kid's first Mets hat was coming from Harvey Mackay, and he would ship it right to them with a handwritten note to show how much he's paying attention. He knew that level of detail on every one of his clients. And I should pause and go, this is in the 70s and 80s when intel didn't flow the way it does on the internet. That is remarkable to me that anybody could pull it off back then. But he had a 66-point dossier on every one of his client targets because, one, he knew it was effective, and two, I honestly think the guy cared, which is also remarkable. That was a way of knowing his actual targets in a way that the client customer avatar is a workshop of the image of all clients. And in both cases, I think that's very right. I think you should be doing something like that so you have immense clarity on who you're speaking to, so that that awesome, unique selling proposition that makes you a unicorn can be broadcast to the ideal client. Clarity is money. And going back to failure, some of the way that you get to clarity is by tripping around and finding the truth about who your ideal customer is. So if you're thinking, oh, I can't make a move until I fully understand my customer, I don't believe that. I think you start making moves and you discover your customer in tandem, and that's where you find truth. That's how we live, and that's how we help our clients find success in their efforts. I'm looking over here and I'm thinking there's one more thing that I should talk about. And that's a book that a friend of mine just actually recommended to me. So Dan Grebe, who is another one of those wildly successful realtors. I mean, could you imagine selling 200 plus homes a year on your own? That is a phenomenal lift. I mean, more than 10 a month, almost 20 a month. The amount of work that goes into that is just phenomenal. But Dan does it. And though he has a team, it's a small team, and most of that is him. Blows my mind. But anyhow, he recommended the book Mr. Schmooze. And Mr. Schmooze basically is living the life of Harvey Mackay in a different decade. And one of the things that I found absolutely wonderful about this book is that after every meeting, he would call his assistant and do a download to his assistant about what happened during that meeting. And it would include things like, Joe's son Jeffrey is really into giraffes. Send Jeffrey a pet toy giraffe and make sure that he's got a blanket around it that's also giraffe speckled. And that would be a directive he'd give his assistant so that he could send this really thoughtful, deep intel gift to show that he was listening, that he cares. Because, and I'm the first to admit, you want to impress me, take care of my kids. You want to really impress me, take care of my whole family. That's one way to get this ideal customer to take notice. And so that's the type of thing a Mr. Schmooze does. You know, if in the book, there's a guy who, he was an ideal customer and he had a kid who was going into golf for college. He was going to be a collegiate golfer. And so there was a golf experience built for this family that included time with a golf pro and their personal name monogrammed on the balls and all of these things that really turned into an epic experience so that the dad, who was the ideal client, could see that his son was being given something that he could not get anywhere else. And that dad then, of course, his heart was knit to that effort, giving his child such a great thing. And of course, there was business to be had because of that thoughtfulness. So that is a way of understanding your ideal customer and treating them unlike any other. And this is how I believe business ought to be done. It's what we try to do. And with every video we create, with every experience that we create out of those videos, and there's a lot of experience work that we do here where it's not just, hey, watch this video, but hey, watch this video and interact with the business in a certain way. It's all meant to point to that level of care and that level of intuition that is unlike anything people are experiencing with other businesses. That's how we think and we believe, and that does, we see it firsthand, it breeds success. So with that, understand that dogmatically pursuing your ideal client and taking the time to understand them from the theory of who they are down to who exactly they are, and then taking amazing, positive, relevant action is what breeds success for salespeople, for small businesses. And dare I say, when large businesses get too large, they lose some of that panache. And the great large businesses find a way to not lose it. I'm gonna say it, but my family's really into Disney. And Disney used to have that panache. And I will tell you that over the last 5 years, I've noticed that large company is losing their ability to treat me like their customer avatar, and I'm not feeling the love anymore. It's hard to watch that happening because we're such Disney fans. However, it's a great reminder that big businesses can do it and they can also lose it. And small businesses, I'm telling you, you can do it better than they can. That is one of your unicorn qualities. So, know that avatar, be dogmatic, plan the Pepsi hand bump moment for your ideal client, and I believe you'll find great success. Next episode, we're gonna have somebody on who does some of that Pepsi hand bump stuff. His community activity in College Park, Florida is one of the reasons why he's such a successful realtor, and we're gonna hear from him on that front. We're also gonna hear all about Blue Man, and you know, I'll be honest, I don't know if he actually painted himself blue. I don't know if he was that Blue Man or if he was, I know at some point he became background support, because Blue Man, if you ever saw it, there was this huge background musical team supporting the 3 crazy bald blue guys. But I think he actually was painted blue for a while too. Like this guy, he's legit. He was a star. And actually, what an interesting way to be a star too, because once you're painted blue, you're a blue man and you don't get recognized at Publix or Wegmans or wherever you go grocery shopping. Isn't that kind of like perfect where you're a celebrity, but you hide because you're not actually a celebrity? It's like Tom Kenny. Like SpongeBob doesn't go to grocery shop. If SpongeBob did, he'd be mobbed by children. But SpongeBob, who then changes his voice back to being Tom Kenny, he can more or less go grocery shopping incognito. So yeah, Rob, I'm sorry, but I just compared you to SpongeBob. Next episode might get weird, folks. I'm looking forward to it. He is a great human. I know he's a great interview because our conversations are always outstanding. We're gonna see you on episode 4. Episode 4. I put an R in there somewhere that shouldn't have been there, but we're gonna keep it. I'm Josh Pies. This is the Bootstrapped Unicorn podcast. So, truth, ready? We're gonna keep all of this in. when I over-caffeinate and I don't have enough water, and of course, especially if I'm really excited about what I'm talking about, and I am, my words trip. That's all I have to say. Bootstrapped Unicorn Podcast, episode 3 in the can. See you in episode 4. I'm going to enjoy this coffee and get a little bit harder to understand.